Grounded in the art and science of medicine, this podcast will help you to acquire knowledge, distill wisdom, and tune in to intuition, offering practical solutions to the complicated health questions that plague our modern times. While the medical model is broken and the conventions we have long held as true are crumbling, how do we make sense of it all? It starts one conversation at a time. Welcome to the Healthy Heathen Podcast. Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Today I have joining me Nathan Walz. Nathan specializes in helping growth-oriented people increase their energy and drive to succeed in their career and life. He found a journey to optimal health to work one-on-one with busy professionals and to work with organizations to help their employees feel better and have increased productivity. He teaches simple lifestyle habits to help people have more energy, increased focus, better sleep, and avoid chronic disease. All right. Welcome, Nathan. How are you?
Ryan. Great. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So yeah, your work is very interesting to me, and I'm really happy to be having this conversation with you today. And what I wanted to jump in to first was this idea that I know that you work with, talking about how the sun is really good for you. And I wanted to jump right in and talk about that. We get a lot of information thrown at us that the sun is bad, and the mainstream media is just saturated with it. We need to be afraid of the sun. We need to slather ourselves in sunscreen and avoid the sun as much as possible. So give us some of the benefits of what the sun can do for us.
Well, so there's actually a study that shows like the biggest reduction of all-cause mortality or all causes of death is your vitamin D level. And your vitamin D level, when you make it from the sun versus taking a supplement, is very different. So number one, or one of the good reasons you want to get sun exposure is because it increases your vitamin D, which helps with immunity. You need vitamin D for strong bones. And today, with everything that's going on, you definitely want to have strong immunity, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, the sun is 4.6 billion years old. The earth is 4.5 billion years old. And forever, how long humans have been alive, the past couple 100,000 years, they've lived under the sun. Sun cancer hasn't really been a big deal until this century. So if you go back 200 years ago, you didn't have all these people dying of skin cancer. And I don't know if you've ever gone on vacation down in the Caribbean, but when you see the locals down there, they're in the sun all day. They're not using sunscreen. At least most of them aren't. And if you look at some of the data, like in the US, for example, Washington State, is Washington State known as a sunny state?
No, not at all. It's known for its
number 5 for skin cancer rates.
Right.
All right. So part of the reason for that belief that the sun is toxic, that we need to avoid UV light at all cost, is because back in, I think it was like the 40s or 50s when they were doing research, they were actually looking at artificial UV light indoors, and they were studying that. And if you get exposed to just UV light for extended periods of time, yeah, you're probably going to get skin cancer at some point.
Okay.
But
what would be like an indoor light is that like fluorescent lights? Is that what we're talking about?
No, these were specialized hospital lights that they were using.
They were special lights.
Yeah, indoor lights, you're not getting much UV. Some lights you get a little bit of UVA. Actually, in the background, you can't see it. I have a black light, which is a source of UVA, which I don't need so much in the summertime, but in the wintertime when my windows are closed, I want that UVA light. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But here's the point. When you get UV light from the sun, it's balanced with other colors.
Right.
Some of those you can see, the colors of the rainbow, and some of those you can't see, like ultraviolet light and infrared light.
Right.
So 42% of the sun is infrared light. You can't see it. But there's a whole branch of medicine that's called photobiomodulation. You may know it as low-level light therapy.
Okay.
All right. It's really big with professional athletes, with vets. Some chiropractors use it. Beauty salons use it because it's great for your skin.
And that's using the infrared
It's using
frequency.
red and infrared light because it's regenerative. So any damage you get from UV light from the sun, it's being regenerated with red and infrared light.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I'll give you an analogy. Like most people consider apples to be healthy, right? But if
Yeah.
you just extracted all that sugar from the apple and just ate that, is that the same thing?
No, all right. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, you're not getting the fiber, you're not getting the pectin, you're not getting the different vitamins. And that's kind of like when you have these studies that only look at UV light, they don't look at the rest of the spectrum of sun, and they're saying UV light is bad. But that's kind of like saying apples are bad if you just eat sugar extracted from apples for the next year.
Right. So, so what would you say to somebody who's, I'm of Italian heritage, so I can tolerate the sun, but I know my brother, for example, he's a redhead and he's pretty pasty white. And what would you say for someone like that who really can't tolerate the sun very much without getting burned? How would somebody who's got that really white skin, how would they, be in the sun and get the benefits of the sun in a way that would work for them?
Yeah, so in the morning there's no UV light. So everyone has the ability to build a solar callus. So it's probably not showing up on this video. I'm very dark. I don't use sunscreen. I go to Mexico, Dominican Republic, and maybe I'll use it there on day 3 or 4 when I'm starting to get pretty fried.
Yeah.
But I've adapted to the sun. All right. So if you have a lighter skin, that just means you evolved at a higher latitude on the Earth. So that means you want to get more sun earlier in the day and later in the day.
Okay.
And then you want to avoid solar noon when UV light is the strongest. But the first key is you want to adapt. So if you remember, like springtime, occasionally we get kind of like a nice warm day.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be out on those warm days because the UV light is weak. And if you just spend time outdoors year round and start to spend more time in the spring when it gets warmer, you're going to increase your ability to get sun and to not burn. But until that point, get more sun in the morning. And another hack you can do is, like I said, at sunrise, one of the best things you can do for your health is watch the sunrise, because the different frequencies of light, they set your circadian rhythm, your biological clock. All right. So at sunrise, there's no UV light. That red light actually sends a signal to your body, and that makes a natural SPF 15.
Oh, interesting.
So especially for people like your brother, if he goes on vacation someplace like that's tropical, like a lot of people, what they do is they go on a tropical vacation in the wintertime and they're outside all day in the strong sun and they get burned really bad.
Right.
And that can be harmful. If you do that enough, that can set you up for skin cancer and other things.
Right.
But what you want to do is you want to allow that adaptation.
Okay, so there is some validity to the sun overexposure, sunburns, high levels of noontime sun actually can lead to some skin cancers.
Yeah, 100%.
So you have to be smart about how you get it.
Yeah, and you have a detector on your skin that tells you when you've had enough sun, right?
And
so
it's the red one.
Red. Guess what? Time to get out of the sun. Time to cover up.
Yeah.
Right. And if you observe, animals do this intuitively. Like when I take my dog outside, he'll be hanging out in the sun. He'll be laying down in the sun. Then he's had enough. He walks over to the shade.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's my approach. I don't use sunscreen also for the last number of years, and I get in the sun, and when my body tells me when I've had enough, and I just put a shirt on, or I get into the shade, or I'm done. And I think that's a great approach. And I feel so, I'm a person who really feels good in the summer compared to the winter. I live in upstate New York, so we have pretty long gray winters, and I definitely feel the lack of sun in the wintertime up here. And I do feel the benefits of the sun, in all sorts of ways: better energy, better mood. Just overall, I feel like a different person in the summer. And That's partly why I was really interested to talk with you. I do take vitamin D, but I think that what I'm producing from the sun is like on a whole nother level because, not just the vitamin D levels, but my whole energy level and my ability to even navigate stress and to get through the day is just so much higher in the summer with all the sun.
Yeah, and if you want, I'll share a little bit why that is.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
So first of all, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, is a really big deal that affects a lot of people.
Yep.
So one of the reasons you feel better in the summer is you're spending more time outdoors, connected to nature where you came from, right?
Right.
So different frequencies of the sun is kind of like the different nutrients in food. So one of the frequencies in the sun that makes you feel good is UVA light. So in the summer, about an hour after sunrise, UVA enters the spectrum. All right. And when UVA light goes in your eye, it makes a couple different neurotransmitters and hormones. It makes dopamine.
Mm.
You need dopamine for drive and motivation. It makes serotonin. You need serotonin to feel happy. A lot of antidepressants, they target the serotonin receptors.
Right.
It makes melatonin. So getting sun, especially early morning sun, you make more melatonin, then you get a deeper sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
You get a deeper sleep, you wake up more energized. It also makes melanin. So when UVA light enters the spectrum and goes in your eye, tells your skin to make melanin, which is a pigment. That actually absorbs all frequencies of UV light and other frequencies of light, and then it reuses those frequencies to build things. Remember, E equals MC squared.
Right.
Right? But then in the wintertime, it's cold out where we live. It's overcast 75, 80% of the time. So you don't want to go outside. But just if you can get into the habit of, even when it's overcast, going outside, doing your best to kind of figure out where the sun is and just looking in that direction, that's going to be a big help because you're getting a good dose of blue light. But also UVA light is present year round. So even here in upstate New York, but if you can spend some extra time outdoors and just, get that light in your eyes, that's going to help you make more dopamine and serotonin so you can feel better.
So, all right. So talk about
just real quick. The other thing that sun does, it reduces cortisol. So you mentioned you feel less stressed in the summertime.
Right.
When you're out in the sun, that reduces cortisol as well. So that helps you feel less stressed.
Okay, for the people that do live up in the colder climates and cold gray winters, what are some of the things that you can do in the winter? Everything from you've already mentioned going outside and just getting what little sun there is. That you would do that even on an overcast day and getting in some of that filtered sun.
Yeah, like the frequency, it doesn't look as nice, and it's definitely not as pleasant. Not seeing a blue sky and it being dark and just cold and feels a little bit oppressive sometimes. It is a benefit. So other things that you can do, you can use a UVA light, which is a black light.
Okay.
Because that's UVA light. All right.
How long would you use that for?
Well, I just have it on like behind my computer.
Oh, okay. So you just have it on in the background.
I'm not staring right at it, but it's indirect. I have some other lights behind my computer too, because the dominant frequency emitted by our screens right now is blue light.
Right.
So I actually have a screen protector on my screen, so it's reducing the blue light. But that frequency is actually very inflammatory. But so some things that you can do in the wintertime, you can get some red light panels. You can use near infrared light. So I have like a near infrared light bulb.
Yeah.
Heat. So that helps to kind of restore the balance in my indoor environment. You can get rid of LED lights because they have a flicker effect. They're all blue. They don't have red. So you can go back to incandescent light bulbs. You can use energy inefficient halogen light bulbs or incandescent. That's going to give you a fuller spectrum. Another thing I do that most people kind of look at me, they think it's crazy, but the people that do try it, they're like, holy cow, that works, is I go tanning in the wintertime.
Okay.
A little bit.
What kind of light are you getting with tanning? Is it the UVA and UVB? Or?
UVB light, yeah, UVA and
B?
UVA and UVB, yeah.
And okay. I have done tanning in the past, and I've noticed that, you know, you do feel good when you come out of there. Now, what are the risks associated with the tanning? Are there, I mean, do you have some warnings with that, or do you
Yeah,
recommend that to a client?
it's a good question. You are getting some EMF exposure.
Okay.
Everything you do has a risk reward.
Hey, before you go on, can you explain for people in the audience that might not know what EMF stands for?
Yeah, EMF is electromagnetic field or frequency.
Okay.
You get EMFs. The sun is a giant EMF, but that's a natural EMF. Life on this planet evolved to that EMF. There are also a lot of man-made EMFs, so wireless radiation. So the town we live in, for example, a bunch of us were speaking up against the city council because they want to roll out 5G,
Okay.
which is a very powerful man-made frequency that where they want to install a whole bunch of antennas. But the biggest EMF threat for most people is in their home, from their Wi-Fi, from their phone, from their home cordless phones, from their smart TVs, which basically have a built-in Wi-Fi into them, from smart appliances. So all these different things, anything you plug in, that emits an electric or a magnetic field. That creates inflammation in your cells.
Okay.
So when you go tanning, you're getting blasted with some EMFs. So that's part of the risk. The reward is you're making vitamin D. So if you're super sensitive, some people are EHS, which is electro hypersensitive.
Okay.
Like some people, they can only live in the country because they're so if they go into a city, they might get a migraine or just feel horrible, be in pain, can't think. But other people, it doesn't bother so much. So if you're not EHS, start off with a couple minutes, see how you respond to it. But sometimes I go tanning, I see people, they look kind of orange, and I don't know if they're doing too much spray tan or if they're just
spray tan. It sounds like spray tan.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going in there, I do 7 minutes like 3 days a week, so it's not a ton of exposure, but it's just enough to kind of give me a little bit of vitamin D, and
Right.
For me, it works. So everyone just has to. We're all unique in our needs and what makes us healthy. Like we have the basic things that work for most people, like drinking water.
Right.
But for some of the other things, you have to test them out. So if you're a little bit kind of leery, like, I've always been told, don't go tanning, start off with a minute. You do okay, do 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and just see how you respond to it.
Yeah, and I'm really particularly interested in what you're saying about these wintertime tactics that we can do to help us feel better, because I'm definitely one of those people that has that seasonal affect disorder. And I know so many people, I mean, I don't know if it's diagnosable, but it's something that I notice around late September, that as early as late September here in upstate New York, that I'm really starting to get a little depressed. Nothing major, but that it's just a shift that doesn't feel good. And, anything to kind of keep that energy going. And so I'm really interested in these hacks, as you call them. And it's really great that you're sharing this. Now, I have a friend who last winter, for the first time, turned me on to the infrared light, which you had mentioned earlier. Now, I know some of these infrared lights, there's two spectrums on the infrared, right? Near infrared and far infrared. Can you talk about like the difference with that, and what's the benefits of how they're different?
Yeah, so you've got red, then you've got near infrared, and then I think there's a middle infrared and far infrared.
So the red is just in the visible color spectrum.
Yeah, red's within the visible color spectrum. Then near infrared is just outside of that color spectrum.
Okay.
All right, so if you can kind of visualize, so red is about 600 to almost 700 nanometers. I think near infrared is like 700 nanometers to like 1200, and then far infrared is like 12 or 1300 up to 3000. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere near about. So different frequencies of infrared penetrate at different depths. So one of my other wintertime hacks, at least it used to be, is going to the sauna. And I would go to the sauna at my gym, which is closed now. I don't know when it's going to open, and when it does open, I don't know if the sauna is going to be open. But the sauna that I love the best, I've been in full spectrum. I've been in just kind of like the dry hot sauna.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my favorite.
Which
That
one's your favorite? Sorry, you cut out there for a second.
just the dry hot sauna, kind of
Dry
like
sauna.
sauna that's like it's at a lot of gyms.
Right. So not an infrared sauna, just the
Yeah,
typical.
well, that is infrared. Any kind of heat that you can't see,
Oh, okay.
infrared.
Interesting.
Okay. So I'm not a specialist on saunas. Some people say, oh, far infrared is the way to go. Other people say full spectrum is the way to go. I've used all of them. I respond best just to a very hot, dry sauna. That's
Gotcha.
what makes me feel the best.
Just heating up the rocks and having that radiant heat.
Yeah. But right, like I said, my gym is closed. My parents have a far infrared sauna. So in the wintertime, I'll be using that more because that's what I have to use.
Right.
And that makes me feel good too. So I don't know like the benefits why, if far infrared is like how that's different than just from a dry hot sauna. But what I do know is during the summer, you're getting that full spectrum of infrared light. So you really want to do your best to maximize that. And infrared light is anytime the sun is out, infrared light is present. So if you're concerned about too much UV light, like I said, maximize on your sun in the morning and then later in the day when UV light isn't as strong. And if you want kind of an indicator to know how much UV light you're getting, there's an application for smartphones. It's called D Minder.
Okay.
And with D, are you familiar with it?
Actually, I am familiar with that. Yeah. And it kind of tells you, how much vitamin D that you're.
Yeah. So you can put in like your skin type. So your brother would be a Fitzpatrick 1, it sounds like. If you're black, you're a 5. It just depends on like how quickly you burn or tan. So you put in your skin type, you put in, and then when you set it up, you put in your percentage of skin exposed, kind of cloud cover if it's super cloudy or not, and you hit start. And then it tells you like how much vitamin D you're making. But the other thing it tells you is the UV index. So I think it goes up to 14. The highest I've seen here is 12. But this time of year, we're kind of peaking out around 9, 10 at the highest. So, just kind of, you can look at D Minder and be like, okay, the UV index is 3. So it's getting a little bit of UV, but not too much.
And if for people like to keep it simple, I mean, you said something earlier about just using your own internal, your own internal minder, about when your skin and your body kind of tells you, okay, I've had enough. And I have that. I feel that pretty clearly. Oftentimes I will push it because I might be having fun or there's not some shade necessarily around, or I didn't bring the right clothes to change into, to cover up. And then I'll pay the price for that. But, is that, do you have to be checking in with the UV index? And another thing is, actually my brother lives in LA, which does have a lot of, they do have more of a UV problem, I think, there, as far as, with the atmosphere and the pollution and the ozone. So there's all that too. It can start getting pretty complicated when you look at all that. Is it okay just to go with your own internal, meter and get out of the sun when your body's telling you to?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what I do. I just use D Minder because I like to, I'm a little geeky. I track a lot of different things that I do. So I just like to track, it gives you an indication of how much vitamin D you're making. It's not 100% accurate.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is just know how you respond to things, know your limits when it comes to sun or anything that you're doing. So yeah, that's definitely the way to go. But just for somebody that's starting out, somebody that their whole life they've been afraid of the sun, but they hear this and do some research. Don't take my word for it. I encourage people to go out, do their own research, but if you feel
what kind of books, or do you have something that you might recommend for someone to read or to start with, or just Google, or what?
I would just go to NIH. There's this study. If you Google biggest reduction of all-cause mortality.
Okay.
It's a published research report.
Yeah.
And I think it's a meta-analysis where it's looking at a lot of different studies. But the bottom line is the higher your vitamin D, the lower your risk for death.
It's a really, really important vitamin. And do you want to talk about vitamin D a little bit? And there are different forms of it. Are you knowledgeable about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super knowledgeable. I mean, I know the basics of it, but the way vitamin D is made is when UVA light hits the surface of your skin, it causes a vasodilation,
Right.
which brings your blood closer to the surface. It does that by releasing nitric oxide. Now, the way vitamin D is actually made from cholesterol. So another myth is like, oh, fat is bad. You should be on a plant-based, low-fat diet. If you look at the molecular structure of vitamin D and cholesterol, there's like 1 atom difference between the two. So basically, sun sulfates cholesterol. So that's one of the reasons that cruciferous vegetables are so good, because they're high in sulfur. Things like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, onions. But you need that sulfur to convert cholesterol to vitamin D.
Okay.
There's D3 and, calciferol. I don't really get into all those details.
Yeah. And I mean, this is kind of going off into a tangent, but I have been reading actually quite a lot of studies that have been coming out in the past 10 years about how cholesterol is good for you, and it's protective of the brain and brain diseases specifically. Preventative for Alzheimer's.
Well, your brain's a big blob of fat.
Right. And not to knock the benefits there, I'm sure there's a lot of benefits to a plant-based diet. But there's also some benefits to eating animal protein and eating animal fats, or just a high-fat diet in general. So that could, again, this is another whole topic, but it's really interesting to see that you had mentioned this earlier, that it's really specific to each individual, and it's to say there's one thing that's really good for everybody is, other than drinking water, or maybe getting some sun, some really breathing clean air, like it's hard to say because we are so individual. With that said, I wanted to bring it back to the infrared. And last year I did get turned on to infrared light, and I didn't have the money to or just want to make the investment on something I wasn't so sure about, because some of the infrared lights that you'll find out there are quite expensive.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine who was really into infrared and was really kind of teaching me about it showed me that you could actually just go to like pet and grain store for like farm animals and get a brooding light for chickens, which is a red light that they put on chicks to help them grow. So I got a couple of those, and I was shocked to feel, I mean, they cost like $20, and I was shocked at how good I felt from using this. It was just lying there in bed and soaking in this infrared light, and just feeling like completely rejuvenated, sometimes falling asleep into a really deep nap and feeling energized really down into like the cellular level.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was going on. Like, I don't geek out like that, but all I know is I felt good and I did it pretty regularly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have one that shines on me. I do use a clamp lamp, and it's shining down on me in the wintertime, because where we live, it's very cold, and I keep my place pretty cold. But the reason it feels so good is because your body uses those frequencies of infrared light. Your mitochondria uses those to make energy. So it has a biological effect on your body, and it penetrates very deeply. In fact, infrared light, it penetrates right through your skull. So surrounding your skull, you've got a layer of cerebral spinal fluid, which is mostly water. There's some other things in there. And then the brain is all kind of wrinkly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of layers. Right?
That cerebral spinal fluid goes into those folds in the brain, and they actually act as a light tunnel. So infrared light, it penetrates right through your skull, and it goes to all parts of your brain through those light tunnels using the cerebral spinal fluid. And it's anti-inflammatory. It helps your brain regenerate new cells. and it can penetrate up to 30 centimeters in your body. So it's
really, really fascinating.
What's that?
That's really fascinating. And I did hear about the benefits of actually putting it on your head. And just the way my room was set up, and I wasn't really able to put it onto my head, but I had it on my body mostly. And I was literally, after 20 minutes, half hour, sometimes I was just jumping out of bed with all this energy.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, when a woman is pregnant, the fetus is surrounded by amniotic fluid. That also acts as a light tunnel. So throughout evolution, when a baby was growing and inside mama, it was getting those frequencies of light that help to nourish the baby. It's a different kind of nutrient from the sun. But humans need it too. And the really interesting thing is, like, when you and I were kids, they didn't have LED light bulbs.
Right.
They had fluorescent, but most people in their homes use incandescent light bulbs.
Right.
And one of the reasons they were faded out is because they're energy inefficient. A lot of that electricity gets converted into heat.
Right.
You can't see it. So the lighting industry, they consider that waste. But the thing is when we were growing up, even when we were inside in the wintertime, we still had an indoor source of infrared light. Now our economy, most of the jobs are inside for a lot of people, unless you're like a landscaper or something that gets you outside. But most of us spend 90% of our time indoors. So today, incandescent bulbs have been phased out in favor of first fluorescent and now LED, which have zero infrared. And the majority of that light you're getting indoors is blue, which is very high energy. It causes inflammation. And unlike the sun, your skin has a detector when you've had too much UV light. Frequencies of blue light actually penetrate deeper into your skin. They penetrate to the fat layer. Causes inflammation, but you can't feel that inflammation. That inflammation has a longer half-life than the inflammation on your skin from UV light. So you get a sunburn, you heal relatively quickly. When you get that inflammation in your fat mass, that lasts longer than a sunburn, but you can't feel it.
So all right, so what I'm hearing you say, and this kind of jives with my personal experience, which was, growing up, I don't think that I experienced that seasonal effect, thing until really I went to college. I did grow up in the upstate New York and Buffalo. And just so listeners know, Nathan and I are both located in Ithaca, New York, which is a very cold place in upstate New York in the winter time. And I did not really experience that sort of seasonal affect thing in the winter. And so maybe what you're saying makes sense, because we had all incandescent bulbs. But when I went away to college and lived in the dorms and went to school, I went to a big university, State University in upstate New York, and it was just full of fluorescent bulbs, probably my dorm too. And I remember for the first time being shocked at how cold it was, how intolerable I found the winter. And now what we've done since then, I grew up mostly in the 80s, 90s, and we've basically taken that incandescent out of the house, is what you're saying, and we filled the house with this blue light from our computers, from our television, smart TVs, from LED bulbs, and it's actually hurting us and exacerbating some of the effects that maybe living in upstate New York would have on somebody.
Yeah, 100%. There's also research showing that blue light can set you up for skin cancer. It causes melasma, which is like a kind of a darkening of the skin. And that can increase your risk for skin cancer. So, everyone wants to blame the sun for skin cancer. But as we get more and more technologically advanced, why are skin cancer rates going up?
Yeah.
We're better at diagnosing it now. But if you don't catch it in time, it can be fatal.
Yeah.
The thing that really interferes with the skin and causes massive inflammation on the skin is 5G technology, because it uses a millimeter wave. It actually it interacts with the sweat glands in your skin. So in a couple of years,
say 5G technology, you're talking about the cells that they're putting up in our communities. You're talking about the stuff that's in our house.
The cells that they're rolling out in
Okay.
different communities.
Okay.
So it's a millimeter wave. It doesn't travel very far. That's why they need these antennas every 150 feet or so.
Okay.
So cell towers are spread out. That's a different frequency. That travels further, travels through walls. 5G doesn't travel through trees, doesn't travel through a lot of objects. So if you live in a town and you see them chopping down a bunch of trees, it's because they're installing, one reason could be because they're installing these 5G antennas. But there's a lot of research that shows how these wavelengths interact with your skin. So a lot of the people I follow that this is the full-time research they do, they predict we're going to see a massive increase in skin cancer from 5G.
Right.
And of course, on the news, they're going to blame it on the sun.
I gotcha. Okay. So we have been moving in this direction for a long time, and the pace of moving in sort of this direction of these dangerous EMFs and exposure to blue light and is accelerating because 5G is just starting to be rolled out throughout this country, and probably going to be successful in being rolled out in most places, I'm guessing. So you work with people to help set up their environments, their personal environments, and their lifestyle to help mitigate some of these dangers.
Yeah, just help people navigate our modern world that we live in.
That's great. And we were talking a lot about skin cancer and blaming it on the sun. What about sunscreens? There's, that's basically the minute someone mentions the sun, especially in the mainstream media, it's immediately going to talk about sunscreen. Make sure your kids are covered in sunscreen. Can you talk about that at all?
Well, to be honest, I don't know a ton about sunscreen because I don't use it. What I do know is there's a lot of chemicals in most sunscreens. There are all natural sunscreens, but if you just go to like your CVS or your Walgreens or whatever and get their brand, it's full of chemicals. Your skin's the biggest organ on your body. It absorbs those chemicals. They go into your bloodstream. And there's lots of downstream effects. Some of those chemicals are carcinogenic. They cause cancer.
Right.
All right. You also reduce your body's ability to absorb vitamin D. Something else that happens when you make vitamin D from the sun is most of your T cells, which are part of your immune system, are in your skin. So when you get sunlight, that actually activates about 1,000 different genes, which make different compounds for your immune system to keep you healthy. So when you're putting on sunscreen, you're altering that spectrum that your skin has evolved to for hundreds of thousands of years. So there are lots of downstream effects that can set you up for other that can increase your risk for disease.
Yeah, and when I was doing a little research before our interview here, and I did find something I'm going to try and pull it up here and see how this looks. All right. Here's an article in the Natural Health News saying that sunscreen chemicals enter the bloodstream after a single application. This study was done by the FDA, actually, and it studied the four main chemicals that are used to block the sun. And like as you said, it notes in here. Actually, back up a little. It notes that there's two ways to. There's two different kinds of sunscreen. One would be like sort of a mineral type sunscreen, the kind of white that you just put on that actually just reflects back the rays of the sun.
Yeah, like a zinc-based one.
Zinc, yeah, exactly. Back in the days when people would have that white on their nose. And then there's the chemical ones, which is by far the more popular and what gets recommended by skin doctors. What they're saying is that these four chemicals, which are, let me see if I can read which chemicals they are. They are avobenzone, oxybenzone, and I don't know how to pronounce these. These are not things that sound like you want them in your body, and that they enter the bloodstream after a single day of use. And this was reported, again, this was studied by the FDA in 2019 and reported in the medical journal JAMA, JAMA. Now, of course, they go on to say, well, this does not mean that those chemicals are bad for you. It's just showing that those chemicals end up in your bloodstream. But, you know, I think any parent is going to want to know, and some of these chemicals are known to cause cancer, as you said. So while this study is not making that connection or that leap, I think it's, you know, just pretty logical to say we shouldn't put sunscreen on our kids with chemicals in it, because it's going to end up in their bloodstream, and those chemicals are not good for us. So I think the approaches that we talked about at the beginning of this interview, about just listening to your own body, about when to be in, when to be out of the sun, you know, avoiding that noon high radiation sun, doing the morning and the more later afternoon to evening sun, wearing long sleeve shirts and wide brim hats is really the way to go. And also, you know, you're not getting the benefits of your sun when you're covered in these sunscreens, and you're basically, the sun is just cooking those chemicals right into your skin and into your bloodstream. I've you know, I'm a trained homeopath, and one of the things my homeopathy teacher taught was basically when we were covering skin, was that don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't eat, because everything that you put on your skin is going to end up in your system.
Yeah.
So occasionally I will put some olive oil on my skin, or coconut oil, just because it does help to, I don't know how it works. You know, again, I don't geek out on those things, but it does seem to soften the burning and bring it more towards the bronzing. So that's when I have, you know, when I actually have time to like work on a tan, which is not so easy these days. But yeah, it's amazing how busy we all are, and even in the time of the pandemic and the lockdown.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I'll tell you one thing people can do if they're, you can actually do like an internal sunscreen. Like if you're concerned about using these sunscreens now, you go out, you do some research, you're just like, oh my God, I didn't realize all these chemicals I was putting on me, putting on my kids. But if you eat higher amounts of carotenoids, that's a natural internal sunscreen. And carotenoids are in vegetables and fruits that are orange, yellow, and red. Also things like shrimp, salmon,
Wow.
has astaxanthin, which is, you know, in the food chain of carotenoids. Like astaxanthin is very high up. It's neuroprotective. It protects the retina. It's very good for your eyes. So eating more of those foods is something else you can do to further protect your skin.
And so mostly, you know, hey, we're two white guys, and we're talking about mostly, you know, light colored skin and how the sun affects it. Now, how we did mention a little earlier about brown and black people, and brown skinned and black skinned people. How is this different for them? Is there any significant differences in how vitamin D might be absorbed, or, you know, is that something that you're knowledgeable to talk about?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And the darker you are, the more sun you need.
Okay.
So there's a large Somali population in Minnesota.
Okay.
In Somalia, they don't even have a word for autism in their language. There are Somalis in Minnesota and Detroit that have autism. So you have to ask why. Where's Somalia? It's a very low latitude. It's very close to the equator. They evolved getting a lot of sun.
A lot of sun. So why is it that they need more sun? Is that their body
They have more melanin.
They have more melanin, so they're not producing as much vitamin D with the sun, basically.
Right.
And that vitamin D is protective.
More of a natural sunblock. So they need more sun. The darker your skin, the more sun you need to make a similar amount of vitamin D.
Okay.
And it has to do with your biology. So you've got three different genomes. So most of modern medicine, most people today, they're looking at the human genome, the nuclear genome. You know, if you look at funding from the NIH, 90%, 97% of funding goes to the human genome. But you also have a mitochondrial genome. You also have a gut genome. And the gut actually influences the mitochondrial genome, which influences the human genome. But your mitochondrial genome has a haplotype. And what that means is that kind of tells you where you evolved from. So people that evolved close to the equator have one kind of haplotype, and people like Northern Europeans, for example, have a different haplotype.
Okay.
And if you have a haplotype from people that evolved close to the equator, that means you're tightly coupled. And what that means is your mitochondria, they can make energy or they can make heat. When you're tightly coupled, most of your mitochondria production goes to energy, because people that evolved in the equator, there are big animals down there.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to run your ass off if you were hunting and all of a sudden something bigger came along. Whereas people that evolved in the north, they had to contend with very cold winters. We didn't always have goose down jackets and heated homes. So if you have more of a northern haplotype, your mitochondria, they're making more heat. All right. So if you have a haplotype that evolved by the equator, you need more sun.
The sun kind of powers you more.
The sun powers you more.
And the sun heats you more in the northern climates. That's interesting. It's amazing how adaptable we are. So
if you want to kind of tie this to what's going on right now with coronavirus, I forget the guy's name, but the Surgeon General, he was it him or was it somebody else? But it was talking about, okay, why in America are Black people disproportionately affected by this? And people are saying, oh, it's racist and all this, but no, the reason is because if you have darker skin and you're living in a northern climate, you need more sun. You're not getting that sun. You have less sun, you have less immunity. You have less immunity, you're more susceptible to disease.
Right, and it might be well, we talked about how people with darker skin need higher levels of vitamin D, and that information I don't think is really widely out there. So that could be part of it too, as to why, why we don't maybe know. I mean, everything might be more geared towards people with lighter skin. So that could be part of systemic racism, in which you don't really, it's just kind of the way it's set up. Yeah, really fascinating about how this all works, and these about how we developed and how we utilize the energy from the sun. So it sounds like we talked a lot about the different benefits of the different rays of the sun, and different frequencies, I guess I should say. And it sounds like the sun is really, our best source for all of this. And that even in the colder climates, we're doing infrared, but we're getting only a little part of it, and if we can get the sun. Now, when you say get the sun in the wintertime, I mean, are you going outside without a shirt on in a cold day, or how do you just get in your face in the sun, or what are you doing?
I've been known to do that. So something else that's also very good for your mitochondria is cold exposure.
Okay.
So in the winter, I wear substantially less clothing than other people around here. But lots of times, all you really need to do in the winter, you don't have to go outside without your shirt on when it's 20 degrees outside. But you do need to spend more time outside with your eyes exposed to the sun. That's the most important part.
Oh, interesting.
Without sunglasses. Another thing that I haven't mentioned yet is when you're getting sun exposure, you don't want to be wearing your sunglasses, because remember that UVA light, it goes in your eye, it tells your body to produce melanin, which you need to protect you from the sun. So when you have your sunglasses on, which block UV light, your brain doesn't get the message. You don't reduce melanin, that can increase your risk for sun damage.
Okay.
All right. And same in the wintertime. if you're skiing or if you need sunglasses for safety purposes because you're driving and the sun's in your face, then wear them. But if you're going for a walk and you can do so without glasses, don't wear your glasses or put them up on your head, because you
Now,
want those frequencies of light going into your brain. So it sets your circadian rhythm. So you get that UV light in the wintertime so you can make more serotonin and dopamine.
you had mentioned skiing. Now it is, the goggles that they have for skiing are off. Sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're orange. Now, is that going to block things too? Or I mean, obviously, it sounds like the best thing would be just to have a clear goggles to protect your eyes while you're skiing.
No, I mean, the yellow is fine. Just because, I mean, the reason it's yellow is because the sun reflects off the snow, and that can be very bright. But I'm just talking about if you're just going for a walk in the wintertime and we have an occasional nice sunny day, don't wear your sunglasses is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
Because you're reducing the benefits that you're getting from the sun. Yeah, you're still getting out, you're getting fresh air, you are getting some sunlight on whatever skin you have exposed, which is not a lot. But
what about on those sunny winter days when the earth is white and it is really blinding? What would you recommend in that case if you're just saying don't wear sunglasses? Are there we talked about yellow glasses. I mean, that would reduce some of the blue.
The reason it's too bright for you is because you've adapted to wearing sunglasses.
Gotcha.
So that's actually an indication that you have lower dopamine. So you make dopamine in your eye. When you have lower dopamine, it actually changes the orbit, the shape of your eye. All right. So it's real easy to readapt. So if you've just been wearing sunglasses for years and you take them off and you can't handle the sun, start to watch the sunrise. And that light, it's going to help your eyes readapt to natural light. And just start off with a little bit. Maybe do 5 minutes if it's super uncomfortable.
Okay.
Then the next day do 10 and just kind of work up. But I never wear sunglasses except unless I'm like driving, and if I go to the tropics, I'll just bring them down there just occasionally to look cool or something. But I don't wear. I wear glasses as little as possible. When I do wear glasses is indoors. So at night, once the sun goes down, I wear orange glasses to block the blue light so it doesn't mess up my sleep.
Yeah, I have been turned on to these. They're more like yellow glasses, and they block blue light. Is that what you're talking about? Orange, yellow is kind of the same thing, or
during the day you can wear yellow. They also make some, for example, these are blue blockers here. These have a pin in the lens. So in the day, you do want some blue light because you're getting blue light from the sun. But the sun, 2% of the sun is blue light, as opposed to indoor lighting, which is like 60, 70, 80% blue light.
Right.
So during the day, you do want to filter that. This lens is a little more expensive. But yeah, I've got some yellow ones too that I used to wear before these. So these are good for during the day, but at night, you want to block out all the blue. You want to block out the green because both of those turn off your body's production of melatonin. You need melatonin to get into a deep sleep. Gotcha. You also want to cover up your skin because you have photoreceptors on your skin. It's called melanopsin. So it's in your eye, it's in your skin. It's very sensitive to blue light. So when if
you're on your computer, you're wearing these glasses to protect your eyes and you're covering your skin so that you're not getting at night. Right.
Yep.
Now, I do have some personal experience with that. I was doing a volunteer shift at the local co-op here, and it's all fluorescent lighting there, and I must have been sensitive to it because after the end of the 2 hours, I was just blasted, like so tired and kind of. It was kind of like a customer service bagging shift, so I was interacting with a lot of customers, but I generally like that, so I picked that shift. But I did have a pair of those yellow glasses, and I started wearing them, and I would be able to sail through those 2 hours without feeling the tiredness that I was feeling previously. So there's something to it, and it does look a little funny, but I kind of thought it looked cool. So setting my own trends.
Yeah, good for you, Brian. Yeah, there's a ton of published research behind this. The AMA even, which I'm no fan of, they have recommendations to minimize blue light, but there's all sorts of published research. Blue light increases risk for cancer. Blue light increases in children ADHD. Blue light increases your risk for blindness. The organ most affected by blue light, other than your skin, is your eye. Your eye is an extension of your brain. So when you get chronic inflammation in your eye, guess what? You're getting chronic inflammation in your brain too.
So what are the main sources of blue light in the house that we need to be wary of?
Energy efficient light bulbs and screens. So your TV, your computer, your phone, your tablet, your laptop.
All the things we're staring at all day long.
100%. So there's a software I have on my computer. It's called Iris Tech.
Yep.
That reduces blue light. So in my monitor, I have limited blue light. I have an open window, so I'm getting the full spectrum in.
Yep.
I have other lights in my office environment, so I'm adding back to that spectrum of light. It also reduces flicker effect. So something else that affects a lot of people is LEDs flicker at about 20,000 cycles per second. So if you want to just kind of do a little test, you can do like a little video one of your light bulbs with your phone, and there's like a slow setting or something.
Yeah.
But you can see
slow
that.
Motion. Like do it with slow motion, and you can see the flicker, huh?
You can see the flicker, but your pupil, it's like opening and closing so fast you can't even tell. If you're looking at your pupil, it looks like it's not moving, but it's constantly having to adjust to the flicker. There's an energy cost for that. And some people get migraines. Some people get neck and shoulder pain. But the flicker too, that's another issue, and it's substantially worse with LEDs and with fluorescence than it is with incandescence and halogen.
So, all right. So this is kind of what you do with people. It sounds like this is how you help people to make lifestyle changes, to feel better and to have a healthier lifestyle. Is there any information that you'd like to share if people want to get in touch with you, to, consult with you? Feel free to share it, and I'll post some information from Nathan at the end, along with this video.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got I call it my biohacking guide. So it has something like 9 or 10 different biohacks. Most of them are geared towards improving the health of your mitochondria.
Okay.
So I'll give you a link for that. But if you get that, you sign up for my mailing list, and then you'll be getting emails from me, usually about 3 days a week. And if you have questions, you can just respond to an email.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been a really informative and educational conversation. I really appreciate your time and coming on here.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks so much for having me on, Brian. Great chatting.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.